Hey there, Mary Sheila here, and today I want to talk to you about a very simple test that you can do to know what your average blood sugar numbers are and to support your cardiovascular health. This test is called your A1C test or hemoglobin A1C, and it will measure your average blood sugar levels. Now, it's really important that our blood sugar levels stay down overall and in general. And yes, they're going to peak and up and down when we eat, and that's just a natural response to eating food. But if they stay up too high and that number is elevated, then we know we might be at risk for prediabetes or diabetes. And we want to avoid that because that is a cardiovascular risk. So your A1C, I'm going to explain it so it really makes sense to you. So if you get this test, your doctor says, well, your A1C is high, they're using it to measure to see if you have that diagnosis. And you can then work on getting it down if it is elevated. So if you are eating more carbohydrates, more glucose than your body can handle, we're all different. Some people can handle more. When you are eating more than your body can handle, then your blood sugar will stay more elevated because your cells might be insulin resistant and you might not be able to uptake all of the glucose you're eating. If that's the case and you have sugar streaming through your blood for longer periods of time, it will start to stick to your red blood cells. Now, we all know if you're like spill some juice or sugar on the floor, it gets sticky, right? So your blood kind of gets thicker and stickier. And you can think of it, I like to think of it as your blood becomes thicker like honey instead of like water. We want our blood to be like water, not like honey. So what is pumping your blood is your heart. So your heart is working at pumping your blood and your blood is flowing through. Now, if your blood is having to pump honey, it's going to have to work harder. So that is a cardiovascular risk. And if your blood is pumping honey, that also means it could put more pressure on the heart and on the vessels and the arteries, and that could even lead to high blood pressure. And if your blood sugar is high, that can be damaging on the vessels and arteries. And so all of that is a risk for cardiovascular disease. So we want to make sure that we are supporting our blood sugar levels, which impacts directly our cardiovascular health. It's one of the most important links we have to cardiovascular health is optimizing our blood sugar. And the A1C test can help us to get there. So if your A1C is higher than 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, that puts you in a pre-diabetic state. We want to get it down below 5.5. Some people even want it lower than that, but optimally we want it under 5.5. I think the statistics are over 5.6. So we want to work hard on getting it down. And even just one little percentage point makes a big difference. So when we are processing our sugars well and we're eating food and there's a little bit of carbs in our meal and we can utilize it and the cells can uptake it, then we're going to have a rise and a fall. But if we cannot tolerate our sugars well, we're going to rise up and it's going to stay high for a longer period of time. And that is where we might run into a problem. So when it comes to our A1C, we want to really pay attention to what we are eating, specifically to our carbohydrate intake. Okay, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and I'll talk about it a little bit more on the next video. But here's one thing to know. When it comes to carbohydrates in our diet, I like to talk about quantity and quality. When it comes to quality, we do want to minimize refined carbohydrates. They turn to sugar really quick and they raise our blood sugar really quick. So it's much harder for our body to bring that sugar down quickly. So we always have a choice. I can eat beans or I could eat tortillas. I can eat brown rice or I could eat white rice. I can eat bread and pasta and chips and crackers, or I could eat root vegetables like roasted carrots and beets or sweet potato or whole beans or whole grains. I can make different choices. And when I make those choices to have whole and complex carbohydrates, my blood sugar will rise, but it will have a more gradual rise because I've got a buffer like fiber and things like that that are going to buffer this out. So I always want to have a little bit of a buffer, And I don't want it, because as soon as I eat the chips and pasta and breads and crackers and chips, I'm going to have a bigger spike, because that grain has already been milled and turned into flour. And so it's really easy for me to digest it and access the sugars into my bloodstream. So what we have to get and understand when it comes to blood sugar balance is this. Blood sugar balance is like the gateway to cardiovascular health, because it's our blood sugar. It's what's happening in our bloodstream. So the foods we eat all end up in the bloodstream. It's either going to negatively impact it or positively impact it. So we want to make sure that we are getting optimal amounts of carbohydrates and the best quality. So in the next video, I'll talk about how much carbohydrate should we have in a meal and in a day. And I'll break it down a little bit more, because this all adds up to our cardiovascular health. So stay tuned for the next video. Eat mindfully, eat whole complex carbohydrates, choose wisely. It's easy to open up a bag of chips or crackers, especially when you're like, oh, I'm hungry, I don't know what to eat. It takes more diligence and effort to say, hey, maybe I'll have some nuts and seeds while I make a meal for myself, instead of opening the crackers and calling that dinner. You know who you are. All right. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you have a great day, and I'll see you in the next video.